Under the clear blue sky, I stepped into a newly harvested rice field. The scent of wet soil and freshly picked rice was strong in the air, mixed with a gentle breeze that seemed to bring peace. Although the rice field was no longer filled with towering rice, what remained was yellow straw that was still firmly embedded in the ground, and now replaced by wetlands full of new life, snails scattered everywhere. The snails, with their shiny shells, were scattered among the footprints of farmers who had just tidied up the remains of the harvest. I paused for a moment, looking around. The rice field looked like a sea of green mixed with yellow that had now turned into a small battlefield between me and the hidden snails. There were so many of them, I was at a loss as to where to begin. Every corner seemed to hide a snail bigger or smaller, each moving at a different speed. Some seemed to slowly glide across the water's surface, while others were faster, almost invisible, darting between the wild rice stalks. Ahead, there was a small irrigation channel that separated two parts of the rice field. I decided to start walking along that section, hoping to find some snails happily hiding there. Step by step, I lowered my body, my eyes wandering around, trying to catch the subtle movements that indicated the presence of snails. In the middle of the journey, I saw a large snail, almost half the size of a palm, crawling slowly on the muddy ground. Immediately, I approached and carefully, I caught it, feeling as if I had succeeded in conquering something very valuable. But just as I put the snail in the bucket, I remembered that there were many other places to check. My back began to ache, but my hunting spirit never waned. I walked further towards the corner of the rice field, a slightly more forgotten place, which often became the home of the more shy snails. There, under a small bush, I found several other snails, hiding in the gaps of dry leaves. Each with a shiny light brown shell, as if shining under the warm sunlight. I kept moving, occasionally stopping and looking down, looking for the slightest movement that would indicate their presence. Each snail I caught gave me a sense of satisfaction, but also a slight dilemma. What if I missed a bigger one behind the bushes? Or maybe there was a rarer snail near the far end of the rice field. But now I don't need to think hard about where to start, because the footprints that are already in the rice field seem to give undeniable clues. At every step, I see small traces that prove that there are more snails hidden there. With great curiosity, I follow the path formed by the footsteps of the previous farmer, which seems to have passed through a route filled with countless snails. As I walked further, more snails came into view. On the wet muddy ground, some snails seemed to be gliding slowly with calm, unhurried movements. I reached for a large snail that was clearly visible near the bushes. My hand reached out carefully, making sure not to disturb its movement. The snail's shell felt slippery under my fingertips, and I smiled with satisfaction when I managed to hold it. This snail was quite large, and even a little heavier than I expected. For a moment, I felt as if I was holding a small treasure hidden in nature. However, the snails seemed like they would never stop appearing. In every corner of the rice fields, between the gaps in the straw, behind the calm puddles, there were always some that appeared to tempt my eyes. I tried to remember every place I had passed, but the longer it went on, the more it felt like this snail world was endless. I began to get carried away, forgetting the time and the tiredness that was starting to hit my body. On the other side of the rice field, near a slowly flowing water channel, I saw small snails moving quickly on the surface of the water, as if chasing their own shadows. I crouched down, waited patiently, and when one of the snails was close enough, I snatched it with a swift movement. This time, my hands were a little slippery because of the mud that stuck to my palms, but I finally managed to catch the snail. As I walked, I looked at my catch in the bucket that was getting fuller. The atmosphere around me felt peaceful, with the sounds of nature sounding so harmonious, the gurgling of water in the irrigation channel, the sound of birds flying low over the rice fields, and the thunder of my footsteps submerged in the wet soil. I stopped for a moment, standing in the middle of this vast rice field, and looked around. There, in every corner I had ever passed, there were so many small lives hidden. These snails, although they looked simple, for those who knew how to find them, were part of a never-ending story of nature. They were part of a larger world, a place that could not always be understood, but always invited curiosity. With a sense of satisfaction, I walked again, following the footsteps again, although every now and then I glanced around, hoping to find one more large snail that would complete this hunt. I continued my steps steadily, feeling the breeze that occasionally brushed my face. The hustle and bustle of natural sounds, from the sound of birds chirping happily to the rustling of leaves blown by the wind, provided a calming rhythm. SSW. Since I stopped for a moment, my eyes glanced around, looking for traces of snails hiding among the yellowing straw. The sweat that flowed profusely through my temples was not just a sign of fatigue, but also a symbol of effort and resilience. I remembered the story of his ancestors who were so familiar with nature, teaching him to appreciate every result obtained from hard work. Every snail I met seemed to revive a tradition and heritage that had been passed down from generation to generation. With a half-full basket, I felt proud. Pride in the effort and dedication I had shown. Not only about the snails I had hunted, but also about the journey I had gone through. Facing fatigue, enjoying every moment when nature speaks, giving peace to the soul that is sometimes enlivened by the daily hustle and bustle. Finally, when the day began to fade and dusk covered the sky, I chose to return. Every step home felt lighter. The basket filled with snails became a symbol of today's success. With a heart full of joy, I was determined to return to this place, to feel the euphoria of adventure, hunting snails, and being part of the timeless beauty of nature. The health I gained, the aroma of wet soil, and the sounds of nature will always be precious memories that accompany my every step forward.